we shall continue in this module with the common simulation pitfalls. I would just like to mention here that it is the simulation weaknesses and the anomalies which cause the simulations to fail. So that is the primary reason that we are giving it a considerable attention. As we discussed, though shortly, that the choice of random number generator is critical to offering statistical randomness to the system. If the pseudo-random number generator is giving a sequence which is fairly predictable, it wouldn't give simulation results which are exciting and give an opportunity for the analysis people to make worthwhile conclusions. The random number generators are highly dependent upon the seed value which is passed on to them, the increment size from one value to the other, and the total number of, or the total range of numbers. So it is highly advised that in the simulation environment, instead of reinventing the wheel and going for an erroneous behavior, calibrated random number generators must be utilized. The time it takes to perform the simulation could have a disastrous effect on the overall simulation goals. It is very important to consider that simulation implementation is a software development life cycle, and implementation is just one part of the overall life cycle. So, applying software engineering methodologies and software engineering tools comes helpful to the success of the simulation. If the simulation environment is superb, but the overall goals which are meant to determine the usefulness of the simulation are not well formulated, the data which is put out by the simulation environment literally becomes useless. For example, in our one-hop communication scenario, the throughput, latency, packet loss, and the error rates are the expected outputs of the simulation environment. But how these are actually used? Are these used to determine the overall cost of a communication network? Or is it that we are interested in finding the maximum number of computers that can be connected to an access point? Or are we interested in determining that this wireless communication environment will work best in closed door or in the open? Implementing simulation is a daunting task because it involves expertise from a broad range of fields. The simulation environment needs first and foremost participation and involvement of the domain expert. In our case, it has to be a networking professional or a communications engineer who provides insight into the behavior of communication channels, the transmitting and receiving antenna, and the behavior of queues. The involvement of statisticians and mathematicians is also necessary because they formulate and formally represent the model which the domain expert passes on. A programmer is needed who will very amicably implement this system to realize the scenario. We also need good soft skills and an overall responsible person who manages the time and resource related requirements for implementing a successful simulation. And definitely, experience greatly helps. If the end user who is eventually going to use the simulation is not taken on board right from the start and is kept involved till the end, simulation does not meet the desirable goals. For example, in one-hop communication scenario, the end user could be a graduate student, it could be an industry professional, or it could be a computer interested techie. Depending upon these three different kinds of individuals, we need special user interfaces, the ability for each of these individuals to pass on relevant information to the modeling system, and the simulated outputs must be presented to each of these according to their individual requirements. For example, a graduate student would be interested in knowing how one-hop communication scenario can be improved using some kind of algorithmic enhancement at the queues of the Wi-Fi access point. If we look at the industry representative, he would be interested in knowing which of the commercially available off-the-shelf products such as Cisco, 3Com or D-Link would serve the data rate requirements of individual laptop, tablet, and smartphone users. An attackee is only fun-seeking. He wishes to enhance his technical expertise by playing with the system. The simulation projects, which are considered, not considering the fact that simulation environments are generally non-monolithic. These are diverse programming modules integrated together on the fly. So somebody who wishes to implement must have an understanding of how many modules are to be implemented in the given resources. Similarly, involving software engineering tools helps. For example, if the design is complex involving the integration of wired and wireless world, it's a multivariate design. It involves independent development of simulations for the wired world and the wireless world, and these two would be subsequently integrated. The code has to be managed for consistency, and any changes which are made on one side must be communicated to the other.